or maybe not, but
Connie's got a microphone. She can ask the question if she wants, but I'm going to go to the public first. So, well, this is not the end of the meeting, so I'm going to go to the public, and because it's going to, I think we have quite a bit. And I'll start. There was two people signed up, and it was Sylvia DeRoy and Robert Cox. So we'll go to you two first. And there's only two that signed up on the wrong list, but I'll take you two first, and then anyone else would like to speak, we can line up. And you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Robert Cox. I'm a resident of McKinleyville, retired educator, who spent the last 2 months really digging into the homeless issues here in Humboldt County. And I'd have to say I'm impressed by all the hard work and the commitment of people who are involved in trying to find some answers to these really difficult problems. And I can see a lot of frustration. And in looking at the issue, there are huge gaps in terms of people interfacing with each other, working collaboratively to solve these problems, which is why I think the task force, if there was a task force that grew out of the shelter crisis, or if there was a task force assigned independently of this shelter declaration crisis, that would be a good thing. Because it seems to me that is really the missing piece as I move around and talk to different people about their perceptions and their perspective and their experience of homelessness. I believe the county and the city of Eureka invested something like $80,000 in a study, and the study was fine, but what we found is that, it's been said here, there isn't any housing available, even if you have the money. And so it seems to me that the next step forward here is, in fact, convening a task force of the major stakeholder groups and actually trusting in the democratic process of engaging citizens and trying to figure this out, because obviously nobody has the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Okay. Well, I wish I had a nice, simple message. I don't. I would like to say to you that if a shelter crisis will do anything for this situation, just do it. It's way past time. This issue has been in front of you for years, and nothing has happened. And I'm hearing you all tonight, and it seems to me like many of you sound as though it's an issue you've just looked at for the first time. And there are children out there without a roof over their heads. There are veterans, families, women who have run from violence, and people with mental health issues, and people who have turned to drugs and alcohol to deal with their pain. And they're sleeping in doorways and under bushes, and it's not acceptable in any society, in any culture, that we allow this to happen. People can't even sleep in their cars in the streets of this city or most of the county. And your job, which we as citizens are paying you to do, is to serve and protect the residents of this county. And you're not doing it. It's got to happen. When I first went out into the big wide world, I rented a room in a building in New York where you had a room with a minimal bathroom and a shared kitchen that you shared with a number of the other rooms. Danco could build buildings like that were very basic and minimal. A room, small bathroom, shared kitchen. And an awful lot of roofs could be over an awful lot of heads. It doesn't sound like much, but you're talking about redoing some of these old motels. That's no better. So there are possibilities out there, and they have to be looked at because the crisis is terrible. There are well over 1,000 people in this county who are sleeping under bushes and out in the rain and the cold. and it is totally unacceptable. The count that is done every 2 years, I signed up for it a few years ago, and it was the most badly managed count that I've ever seen. And so the fact that it's an undercount is not by accident. I've been asked to say something for Claire Paracelli, who had to leave, that she's thanking Supervisors Wilson and Bass for putting this on open for discussion, and that she supports the shelter crisis. Please act. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Edie Jessup. I live in Manila, and Mr. Wilson is my supervisor. And I want to thank you all for putting the shelter crisis on the agenda so the Board of Supervisors can publicly discuss this issue. The petition AHA and others submitted to you in December requesting that you declare a shelter crisis had three pieces to our ask. One was that a shelter crisis be placed on the board's agenda. Thank you. That the board declare a shelter crisis, because what it would allow is for the state law to be implemented that will relax zoning and relax liability issues. Those are the two big things, and throughout the county. The third thing we requested was that the board appoint a multi-agency county task force to plan, implement the shelter crisis declaration throughout the county so people can shelter where they are. It appears that the agenda item has some misassumptions. The declaration of a shelter crisis is not about an extreme weather sheltering. It is about the lack of affordable housing and the failure of the Housing First policy to establish true 24/7 safe, warm, dry, organized, supervised, low barrier shelter for the thousands of unhoused citizens in Humboldt County until there is enough affordable housing. The numbers of homeless on the street today are easily seen and available to you from DHS. Even though the count may be low, they have to turn numbers into HUD. You can get it off the internet, and you will see that the gap between beds for folks and the numbers of people on the street, the gap is so large, it is not great. That count, no homeless folks were counted in Southern Humboldt this year. And I'd also like you to, forget my undercount words. Lastly, the numbers from HUD show this big gap. And we do not have in this county a 24/7 emergency shelter. It does not exist. And that is the first step in settling people and beginning to work out these things. So,
Your time is up. Thank you. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Elaine Johnson. I live in McKinleyville, California. I have lived and worked in Humboldt County for 12 years, including working for the County of Humboldt's DHHS for 7 years. I worked with Connie Beck and Sally Hewitt, whom I respect immensely. I was a clerk in that accounts payable department. I now work for HSU in a counseling clinic for the students, and I'm an office manager. I'm here to ask for a task force that would be multi-agency. I, as I said, respect DHHS, and I'm thankful for them immensely. But as we all know about problem solving, we have to, for brainstorming and creativity in that brainstorming, we need multiple voices and multiple views and multiple perspectives coming at this serious problem that's been going on for a year. And there's many experts here, volunteers, lawyers, medical expertise. We're all willing to, as volunteers, to take part in this discussion. It's a heartfelt one. I'm a fortunate individual. I'm 60 years old, and I am well educated and have multiple degrees. I have a job, I have a husband, I have a home, I have a dog. I own a used Toyota Camry, and my husband owns a used Lexus. I try to shop only at local stores instead of shopping at the internet to help our local economy. I'm pro-business. I'm a landlord also in Sacramento, but that's another story. I live comfortably well. I feel very thankful and very fortunate. I have received help from people along the way, so I seek to pay it forward through volunteer work. I also experienced homelessness at age 19. It was the most traumatic period of my entire life. I'm so sorry, I didn't. My family was abusive, and my mother and brothers took the brunt of it. At 18 years old, my father came after me. A year later, I escaped in the middle of the night and came to California with $700 in my pocket. Didn't last long, and I called my mom for help, and she said, "You made your bed, you sleep in it," and hung up on me. Like that, I was homeless, looking at what bush to sleep under. I didn't know how to do this. After 1 month, in 1 month period, I was raped. On a separate occasion, I was held captive for 1 hour with the intent of rape. I did escape that one. I called the police and I was able to get away. I was threatened with murder twice, also on separate occasions, with choking, and I escaped. And
I'm sorry so we're just going to stick to the 3 minutes for each person. We have a really long list. I'm sorry. When the beeper goes off, that means you have 30 seconds left, just for anybody that's still in line. So sorry about that. All right. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carrie Payton Dahlberg. I live in Trinidad, and I'm so grateful to the woman who spoke before me for reminding all of us that an hour or a day or a moment of waiting on this issue can be desperately hard for someone. I so want to thank you, Supervisor Wilson. I saw something that indicated that you brought it forward, and I'm hearing that Supervisor Bass did also. I want to thank everyone who brought this forward. I want to thank the county people and the volunteers who are working with some very hard to place individuals and working very hard. I'm glad you want to investigate and look into things. That's wonderful. But it's cold now. It's wet now. Someone could be raped tonight. Someone could die tonight. I am begging you to please, at least, if you do, at least at this meeting, each of you to say you're committed to creative, innovative solutions. I mean, you heard Sally talk about tiny houses or tent villages being the best way out for some populations. A safe place where people could sleep in their cars could be the best way out for some populations. Please don't let those things wait another day for a task force. Please try to do something today. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
My name is Bonnie McGregor. I live in McKinleyville. And I just want to say to people who are speaking out of great emotion that please do not blame the people who are working on it. I don't know you well, but I have worked with every one of the supervisors here and all the people who are the staff on aspects of this issue. It was 30 years ago that we started working on this in Humboldt County, all right, 30 years. Things have happened. I assure you, Arcata House did not exist. RCAA didn't have the shelters. We didn't have so much. But one of the things we did back then, and it was partly because the county realized they were liable for deaths, in the county for people who are out in the elements was that we opened a totally inadequate shelter at the Muni. The city was so resistant to doing it that they didn't even turn on the hot water so that people could wash their hands. We have come a very long way. Sitting here and listening to your staff speak so knowledgeably and effectively, and to look at what people are doing is I have great respect, and I'm very pleased. I want to give you a little bit of history as to why we're still here. When I came to Humboldt County, I came from San Francisco. I had directed the food bank, and homelessness had already begun. The first round of money that came from the government for homelessness was for emergency shelter and day services. By the time Humboldt County started getting organized, the next round of funding was for family, supportive, a transitional housing, they called it. So the RCAA, the Arcata House, all that we started developing was that second rung, and we have never had that emergency shelter, never. We've had to do it year to year to year to year to year. But that's the history of why that happened. And it happened, the reason why we don't have public housing is because in 1978, this is where history, oh, shoot.
30 seconds.
Okay, in 1978, the federal government defunded public housing. So we haven't had federal funding for public housing. I do want to go on record as saying I do support declaring a crisis. I think it opens up more possibility. And those of you on the board who have been so eloquent and put it into the housing element and into the general plan that you want to make sure that property rights are supported.
Thank you.
The other side of that is to make sure people without
Thank you, Bonnie.
get housing.
Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Madam CAO, County Clerk, ladies and gentlemen of Humboldt County. My name is Vernon Price. I live at 133, or my mailing address is 133 Betty Kwan Chin's, but I am homeless. I'm 47 years of age. I have 3 type 1 diagnoses through the DSM-5. But I want to stand here before you this morning and saying this may not be the answer, ladies and gentlemen, but it's a step to the answer. We must declarate a shelter crisis here and now because we have lives on the line. Minimum this morning, ladies and gentlemen, we need to appoint a task force that homeless people are involved because their voices are worth being heard. We must be a part of this task force to improve the quality of life, to build a stronger community and a more vibrant county. We've got to be doing this to move forward together. I am a part of HSSA, which is with the Humboldt State University, and it is 15% of the homeless population, and it's 1,800 students that are homeless. I took an assessment at mental health Thursday evening at 1:30. So those of us with severe mental illnesses, ladies and gentlemen, I don't qualify for housing. Even though I do have SSI, that a federal government says that I have 3 type 1 diagnoses, which is debilitating, I still can't find housing. So, I mean, we've heard this morning about the Federal Housing Trust Fund that we can, landlord-tenant engagements, we can obtain those dollars. We have forgotten about Assembly Bill 74 that was just one of the 14 housing elements that was voted in and signed by the governor this past legislation season. Let's act. Talking is really good. Planning is good, but planning without action is dead. Now it's time for us to act. We must act on minimum this morning, ladies and gentlemen. I beseech you, minimum a task force, and we must move forward with implementing the quality of life, improving the quality of life, and move forward with the shelter crisis. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nick?
Good morning. I'm Danny Burkhart. I'm a resident of Virginia's district, and I'm here to speak in support of declaring the shelter crisis. I've heard a lot of evidence as to why this would be a helpful thing to do, and really virtually no evidence as to why we shouldn't declare a shelter crisis. If it does nothing but help and there's really no negative effects of declaring this crisis for the county, then it's something we desperately should be considering. And also, I agree with the task force idea. We need a task force that incorporates many of the different agencies involved, as well as the homeless population. Their voices do need to be heard on this issue. And on an anecdotal note, I spent my first year at HSU homeless. After I was accepted from CR to transfer to HSU from Fort Bragg, I, by the graces of others, was able to finish my degree program and find housing and a job that I wasn't able to find the first year I was here. And I think being able to pay that forward to everybody else that is experiencing the same thing, and unfortunately having similar experiences to some of the folks that have spoken earlier, we shouldn't be allowing other people to go through that. That just, it's unconscionable. And so I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you guys putting this on the agenda and taking it very seriously, but we want to see more action. Thank you.
Morning, supervisors. Thank you for all you do, and especially for Supervisors Wilson and Bass for bringing this issue before you this morning. It's clear that we have a crisis, and it exists in all your districts, not just one or two of them. Supervisor Bone is correct that we don't have all the right answers, but we do know some of them. And it strikes me that if we consider the totality of the problem the county faces, involves drugs and law enforcement and housing and mental health, that the minimum we can do is to declare a shelter crisis. I would suggest, in addition, that the appointment of a task force to bring before you some concrete actions, other concrete actions, I think that's a good idea too. Hope you will support those actions.
Good morning. My name is Winchell Dillenbeck. I'm an AHA board member. I'm a McKinleyville resident, and my supervisor is Ryan Sundberg. County staff does not have the expertise to make the decision regarding the homeless crisis. I urge the Board of Supervisors to adopt the democratic process and appoint a county-wide task force that includes representatives from all stakeholders group to develop a comprehensive plan to address the homeless issue. Housing is a human right. The Department of Justice has ruled that people cannot be deprived of their right to sleep. Housing First has failed to solve the homeless crisis in Humboldt County. There is not enough affordable housing in Humboldt County. Law enforcement is not working as a solution. Incessant ticketing and the criminalization of homelessness is cruel. Law enforcement officers are not social workers. The financial cost to the taxpayers is enormous. The published recommendations and the discussion document in the agenda packet only recognizes an immediate response to the need for shelter, temporary shelter, in the event of a prolonged or unusually inclement weather conditions and not existing state of homelessness in Humboldt County. The point of time count is inaccurate for statistical purposes. Homelessness is staring you in the face on the streets. The Board of Supervisors needs to declare a crisis, a shelter crisis. The task force should develop a two-step program. One, develop services and land access to successfully relocate all homeless people temporarily into multiple legal supervised sanctuary camps in SP2 zones or other available areas. Two, work with local groups to establish and build tiny house villages. Humboldt County must follow the trends of other cities finding solutions to the homeless crisis until such a time when and if enough affordable housing can be built. The Board of Supervisors have been given a second chance to rectify the problem of homelessness. Do not ignore your responsibility and turn your backs on the crisis in Humboldt County. Show your courage and make a stand to address the homeless problem in Humboldt County. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name.
You can pull it down.
My name is Lisa Pelletier. I live in Arcata. I don't have a lot to say. I agree that it's unconscionable that for 30 years you have failed to call a shelter crisis. And I'm also asking that you create a task force. And I have a friend who was homeless for 16 weeks, and she was an HSU student, and she had a 16-month-old daughter. And I can't even tell you some of the stories she's told me from her time of being homeless on the street and how traumatic that is. And I just don't ever want to hear of another homeless person dying. I never want to hear a list where, we did at the last council meeting, and I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, but I don't ever want to hear that again. You guys need to act. Please act. Please do the right thing. Declare a shelter crisis. Do it, finally. We've been waiting. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, and thanks for having this item on your agenda. My name is Shelley Mack. I'm an attorney in Arcata. I'm a McKinleyville resident, and Mr. Sundberg is my supervisor. And I'm here today to strongly urge the board to consider, or not just to consider, but to declare a shelter crisis and to adopt a shelter crisis declaration. Doing so would give you freedom from a lot of the regulatory strictures that otherwise confine the options available to you in dealing with the homelessness crisis. And I understand that the board would love to have more statistical information about the number of homeless persons in the unincorporated areas of the county. But unfortunately, the last reliable statistical count that we have at our disposal is from 2014, the 2014 point in time count, which showed that the county has a homeless population that well exceeds the state and national average. The vast majority of services available to those people, of course, are in Eureka and Arcata, not in the unincorporated areas of the county, like the place where I live. My husband, my daughter, and I all live on Murray Road, west of the 101, and we've seen living right along the Hammond Trail, we've seen a large uptick in houseless people in the last year and a half or 2 years. We see them other places in McKinleyville as well, and I know that they're in lots of other areas of the unincorporated parts of the county. And there are no resources available to those people, particularly in weather like today, like last night. And as I'm sure you know, that kind of exposure to the elements and just being outside exposes that most vulnerable population to greater risk of illness, to the kind of violent attacks we've seen in Eureka and Arcata in the last 6 months. And there's no reason not to take action to just declare a shelter crisis. It doesn't commit you to a particular course of action going forward. I think the task force idea is a wonderful one, but the task force shouldn't impede declaring that shelter crisis now. The rainy season's already here. Emergency shelters need to be here. There are people in need that I see outside my home every single day. And those people are somebody's sons, daughters, fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, friends, neighbors. My daughter is devastated seeing all this, and we can help. This county can help. You can help. So I urge you to adopt a shelter crisis declaration and then to move forward to take more concrete steps to address the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Afternoon. My name is Jimmy Work. I live on the Hicks Charter Trail. I'm currently an unsheltered American. I do not envy you all at all. You guys got difficult decisions to make, and there's no decision you can make where everyone's going to be happy with you. When you form your task force, keep us in mind, and keep in mind too to look at both sides of the coin, not just proof of how many homeless people are out there, but why they're out there. I was put in a trailer in King Salmon. I was guaranteed a year's rent, utilities. 2 months in, the county quit paying my rent for no reason. I was evicted again. Me and my wife back out there in the marsh, even worse off. We had something that was taken from us. You know, America's a republic. You know, it's not a democracy. It is a republic. It was founded as a republic, which means you guys have the responsibility to sit back there, and you have to look at the whole picture, and you have to decide the good of the many outweighs the good of the few, and how to do that. You know, it's difficult to be out there. Being persecuted, we're getting ticketed by sitting in parks during the day for sitting there. We're an eyesore to the community now. We get arrested for being on the trail. You know, and I know the stigma around homelessness. I know. You know, it's not all good. It's not all bad either. But the community is okay with things that are going on with law enforcement. You know, when law enforcement's taking us to jail, day before Thanksgiving, they took me to jail. Okay, I was on private property with the landowner's permission. Okay, and the community was okay with that. You know, they'd sit there and they watch the police come in there and they do their enforcement. Basically, they're eradicating us. And for you to step up and do the shelter crisis, that gives us some form of umbrella of safety, a place to catch our breath, you know, get our things sorted out. We need it. It needs to be done for the greater good of all of us, because nobody in here, I mean, the mess we're in is everybody's fault. Every one of us in here, we're all responsible for it. For those of us who didn't stand up and say no when we should have, or those who didn't say yes, you know, for those who just ignored, waited for it to go away. And now you guys have to clean up the mess, and I don't envy that. But I don't like living it either, I promise you. I'm not out there by choice. I don't want to be. I don't qualify for anything. I fall through the cracks on everything. And it's ridiculous that I'm sitting there and I'm watching so many different agencies that have authority to do so many things, and they can't come together on one page on one thing. You go to a city council meeting, they redefine a word for certain this or that, you know. It's crazy. You know, so form your task force, have them involved in unsheltered Americans, and get the truth of the matter first, and then resolve the truth. Why? I can't be the only person out there who got our housing taken away by the county without justification. I can't be the only one. So they made me chronically homeless. I wasn't chronically homeless at first. I was just a homeless vet. Now I'm a chronically homeless vet. Now I'm a chronically homeless vet that doesn't qualify for anything through the county. You know, what am I supposed to do? My wife's inside at the woman's mission. I've already lost my family to the county. You know, I have nothing now, nothing. And crime, every time the cops came out there, when I was with my wife, every time the cops came out there and took my stuff, what do you think I did? I went and stole again, because I would be danged if I'm going to let my wife sleep on the cold ground and go hungry. And that's just the fact of it. You know, there's repercussions for everything. No one's perfect, no one's innocent, but we can all work together in fixing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Almost good afternoon, huh? My name is Deborah Carey. I live in Southern Humboldt, and Estelle is my supervisor. I would like to thank Virginia Bass and Supervisor Wilson for bringing this forward. I wrote the original shelter crisis declaration letter to the Board of Supervisors 3 years ago, and I myself feel lucky to be here alive today to see this. I want you all to close your eyes and imagine me backflipping and doing cartwheels, because I am. Because we're talking about this. And I really, really am excited that we are able. I appreciate these women. This is your staff. I appreciate all of you for doing this. This is a big thing. We're going to talk about this, and this is what I've wanted to do for 3 years, and I really appreciate it. But I'm concerned when I read the agenda when you talk about weather sheltering and you talk about stats, because we all know, and my supervisor can vouch, that our sheriff spent 80% of the time on that zero population down there. We have homeless people in Southern Humboldt, and I'm sorry, but we do, and those stats cannot be used to make any decisions on. I don't agree with Estelle on the fact if we could actually get mental health and addiction in check, that we could put them somewhere, because I've done that and there's no housing. And it's not in a negative way, Estelle. There's just no housing. I've helped people do that. So I really have helped, and then there's no housing to put them in. A sheltered, and what I'm a little concerned today is after 3 years that we don't understand, a shelter crisis declaration, if everybody's listening, is when a significant amount of persons within the county are without the ability to obtain shelter, and that situations has resulted in a threat in health and safety of the persons. We were there 3 years ago. Today, really, when you talk, I give you the respect, Supervisor Sundberg and Bone. I do. Today, we are in a disaster because you're sitting around talking and playing for the last 3 years. Seriously, that is so disrespectful to me. And I would like for today that you just please move forward, declare a shelter crisis. Can we do a have multi-force task force so that we can look at this and find a place where people can legally sleep? A sanctuary camp, a place where people can be, where they can start to get safe, warm, and dry, and then we can work on alcohol and drug and mental health issues. So I thank you for this time again, and I please move on this today. We've waited 3 years and 101 people I can list off right now that have died waiting for you folks to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello. The Shelter Crisis Declaration is a tool. Eureka found it useful. That's how Betty Chin opened up. We have to be clear that it does have limitations, so anybody that thinks it's a panacea, check it someplace else. But again, it can be helpful. It's a way to move forward. And I want to remind you that you and the city jointly adopted the Housing First approach, and I want to give credit to the people here. This was a sea change in the way of approach, and I was recently at a HHHC meeting where they got the bad news that even people in transitional housing have rights to housing, and that there has to be a process for evicting them. This is something that people that come from the streets need to learn, but they have to teach it to them now, and it's going to be difficult. So I want to give them credit for that. The people that we're talking about, a lot of the things that were being talked about were for people that can receive services. I want you to remember that there are people out there that cannot receive services, and that is where the shelter crisis can come in and help, because as you heard, some housing is they can't use their funding for it. And the shelter crisis, unfortunately, and I say this, I hate saying it, but at least it allows you to put people in substandard housing and in substandard conditions, but at least it's better than being on the street. So that's that. There was a couple things I wanted to comment. Thank you, Deborah, for saying that the housing crisis is really what the crisis is. It is a housing crisis. I would also like to ask that there's a legal crisis. That I'd like to say that there are laws in the books, both local and state, that make people criminals. And the state is bringing forward money, and that money says that you can't have criminalization. And I have this for you here. It is money from the state that needs to be addressed. I also want to speak very briefly to it is not the Coastal Commission. It is the actions of the city of Eureka that has stalled Betty Chin's project. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
I just want to say I've been really impressed and heartened by the presentations of your staff and by the thoughtful questions that you've raised. What I want to speak to, because I think people have spoken about the shelter crisis, and I think that one of the questions I do have is the criteria that you're using, the numbers. So yesterday I did call around to some of the agencies, and I was told that there simply is not a place for women, because Eureka Rescue Mission needs to be very careful about who they take in, because they have women and children. So if someone comes and they've been drinking or they've been on drugs, they can't stay in. If they have a disruptive personality, they can't stay in, and it breaks their hearts. And I can't speak for the staff because she said, you know, I need to speak to someone higher up. But just anecdotally, you hear the stories about people who are cold and end up in the emergency room, and you can, you know, with pneumonia, and they have no place to go. But what I want to beg you to do, absolutely beg you to do, is to build on the success that Bonnie McGregor instituted back when she was a leader and she inspired this, is a task force. And sometimes you think, well, this is something we don't know if it works. It worked. This is a picture. You've got someone from Resco Construction, you've got a minister, you've got Art Hammond of the Hammond Company, you have Ina Harris representing Temple Beth El, you had Bill Hansel when he was, and I was a witness to what that was like. That what happened is the community, out of that process, the community came together, I've mentioned it before, and they operated a rotating shelter among the churches, and then the county offered what they could, which was a wonderful staff person and insurance. And I'll never forget Christmas night, Captain Bill Hansel said it was a gift to him to be able to care for the people. It made it a Christmas for him. So the point I want to make is that if you can move forward in the way that you've spoken today, what you're going to institute is something really wonderful. It's going to be a way for the love of the community to flow, a way for the desire to help. But now we're stymied, and I think that I was not really a fan of the tiny house village concept. I mean, I like any alternative, and I was, you know, enthusiastic in that sense. But what changed my mind is when I was able to spend some time down at the Palco Marsh. And I spoke with people who have mental health issues, trauma, and they said it was the first time that they felt that they were really important and they were needed. And what the tiny house village emerged from is Andrew Heben spent time at villages, and he built on the processes that worked in those communities, that he was a witness that for a time, a month, I don't think it was a long time, he participated. And what it's true, and I know that people can speak to it, is these people living out there know how to look after each other. I experienced that. They were always offering me food when they had very little. On my birthday, somebody emptied their pockets and gave me a tent that they needed, a mini tent. And I was a witness to that. I know there were bad things. And I think we need to have a task force so we can open up all possibilities and trust that our community has the capacity, the love, the ingenuity, the innovativeness, and the courage to act. Because one of the things I think about is is that it?
That's it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Babette Bach. I live in Fortuna and I work down in southern Humboldt in the Garberville Redway area. I don't know about you all, but I'm sure that you all. But I make it a point to speak with at least one housed and houseless person as often as I can. I try per day. I am on a first name basis with many unhoused individuals, and I can tell you that I can speak for them when I urge you to please declare a shelter crisis. I know that there has been a lot of money spent on the lack of housing situation here. I'd like to know how much of that has been spent on salaries and on studies instead of on actually doing. A gentleman that I was sitting next to here in the room has a copy of a declaration made by the General Assembly back in January of 2010 when these issues were spoken about. That is deplorable. There is a crisis, and we should be doing something about it. And the fact that we cannot turn lesser standard housing into temporary places for people to live. I'm a foodie. I'm a feeder. I feed people. And that would be like saying to you, if you haven't eaten in 3 days, and I have this peanut butter sandwich, but I can't give it to you because it's not a nutritionally balanced meal. So you can go without eating another day, even though I have this sandwich that would satisfy your hunger. But I cannot. My hands are tied. I cannot give you this because I don't have a salad and a glass of milk to go with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors.
Pull it up.
I'm Lelania Dubois, and,
Lelania, pull it up.
sorry.
There you go.
Thanks. I'm Lelania Dubois, and today I'm speaking to you as a disabled person and a single mother and a cannabis patient. I have been homeless 3 times in this county. I have lived in my car with my child, and I have only been homeless because I'm disabled and I'm a single mother and a cannabis patient. I have called landlords and applied for apartments, and they have literally told me on the phone before they've even met me in person, when they found out I was on Social Security and a single mom, that they would not rent to me. The state of California has laws around discrimination, and what I have heard today repeatedly is that we have a huge discrimination with how we deal with tenants and how we rent to people. We're in a crisis right now. I think we all see that. But I think we have a bigger crisis coming. We have a lot of women like me who are going in a community that is going through a major economic transition, which is going to create more people like me and like people in this room who don't fit into these gaps. In fact, we're discriminated against. I'm on disability, and I make more than most people because I worked really hard. I get $1,400 a month on disability. My 2-bedroom apartment that is smaller than the meeting that we have next door is $1,400 a month. Every day I worry about being homeless. I work really hard in this community. I have spent my whole life trying to help this community. This is the only place I have been homeless. I really hope you consider considering a shelter crisis. I hope you really start regulating our landlords and our companies that do go through these processes for people. Consider controlled rent environments. This community is going through a major transition, and these crises are going to get worse. If we start addressing them as we look forward in the future, I think we'll find ourselves in a better place in 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
My name is Roy Dahlberg. I'm a retired attorney. I practiced criminal law in Sacramento for a long time, and I saw Sacramento do all the wrong things with homeless people, and I represented a lot of them in criminal prosecutions that didn't need to happen. I actually have only 2 brief things to say to you today. A number of people have asked you to declare a shelter crisis. I would ask you to admit there's a shelter crisis. And secondly, I think you need to convene some kind of task force to address it, including all the people who have an interest. It might be done by the Homeless Coalition. I work with AHA. We'll do it if nobody else will. We'll put together a task force. We would like you to hear what we have to say. I know this is a busy time. Please do that. Admit your shelter crisis.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Excuse me. I support the shelter crisis declaration admittance, and thank you for bringing it forward, Supervisor Mike Wilson. You did get some help with Virginia Bass, but she's been around a long time, and this has not come up before, so let's lay things on the table. A wonderful presentation, so much information, and what did I hear here? It's Floyd Squires was given a lot of leeway. It was apparently it's okay to have illegal, not up to code housing as long as somebody made money off of it. But we're talking about and people are talking about lesser than standard. We're not. I don't believe anybody's talking about let Floyd Squires let him be rehabilitated for his slumlordness and let the properties not be. We don't want to have unsafe properties, but sanctioned campsites are a step up. You see, going from owning your house or having a nice place to Floyd Squires, that was a step down. We want people to go from living, as it said, in the mud and the rain and have a step up into something. Now, I went to that beautiful hiking area that people were down there, you know, they got kicked out. It's beautiful, and there was a nice flat wooden platform that I believe was to help people stand, sit, or something. I thought to myself, how much did it cost to make that? It's out of the mud. What if there was a sanctioned campsite? You could put a lot of flat platforms that people would love to put their tents on. It wouldn't cost very much. Just depends. This whole thing takes a big shift. When Focus Strategies came in with the Housing First, I went online and I found like a series of 5 presentations from, I think it was up in Canada someplace. They had done Housing First. And all the elements of people who are not used to being in a house, people who are in housed situations, not used to having people who are not used to being in a house. So there's a lot of work that has to go on to get, even the social workers had to realize they were no longer the experts. They were now assisting somebody who was expert in their life how to get better. So the county has got to go from a long history of criminalizing homelessness, even to the point of, I believe the county was held liable for partially for the death of Martin Cotton when he was killed on the streets and in the jails. So we have, and they had to pay a, what, $4.3 million penalty to that. The trial took place in San Francisco, so people may not know about it. But you have to change your attitude and come to it with we can do, we are in it together, not the thing that we're isolated. I'm representing different communities. We're all in this, so do it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I follow the tall guy. My name is Lance Morton. I'm from Eureka. I have a few comments I'd like to make. First, I want to congratulate you on presenting the issue for discussion. I think it's great timing. Yes, we have a crisis. Some of it's delivered by weather. Much of it's delivered by circumstances beyond our control. 101. Marijuana, which makes some of our communities very interesting in terms of its mix of homeless problems, tremors versus the chronic homeless. Homelessness is not intractable, but it's very complex. Every one of our homeless has a different story. Some of them are dual disordered. Some of them have a serious mental disorder. Some of them are characterologically disordered. Some of them have fallen into a lifestyle that has become what they expect. And it's very difficult to break those expectations, those patterns. I think that the idea of a task force, which many of the folks have talked to preceding my comments, is a great idea. I would caution, though, that a task force suggests that it's a one-time, let's take a look at the issue and solve it. I think you need a commission. Housing First, the program that George Bush brought to the federal government from Texas under Mangione, who's at HUD, was a great concept. It is a great concept. And one of the pillars of successes, and yes, we have evidence-based practices that show what can work, but one of the ways that Housing First works is it has to engage all the stakeholders, cities, counties, other jurisdictions, those that we're attempting to serve, the private business, housing specialists, certainly the expertise that we see from DHHS. I believe they have great expertise. I think they're limited in their impact because we pay out a lot of money for our homeless problem at St. Joe's, the Sheriff's Department, the police departments, but those funds are not integrated into trying to solve and prevent those issues. So I think a commission is a great idea. We do have evidence-based practice programs that have worked fairly well. California is anomalous because we have 70,000 homeless, by far the largest homeless population in the country. So our problems are a bit unique and require a coordinated, deliberate look-see. I would also encourage the board to have a workshop that you dedicate a day, either before the commission or after the commission, to discuss these issues in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there, welcome.
My name is Linda Lee, and I live in Manila. And I'd like to open my statement by saying I think when we discuss homelessness, we have a tendency to lump all homeless people into one large group. And I feel like there's probably about 5 different subgroups of homeless people that each need to be treated in a slightly different way, or maybe a largely different way. And during the point in time count, I interviewed homeless, mostly men living in the dunes in the forest on the peninsula, and almost to a person, these were a different group. Most of them valued their independence, and they had quite a few strengths. You know, I don't condone the little structures they built, but most of them were pretty clean, and they didn't want to be on the streets in Eureka where they felt more vulnerable. So they had gone out and found these little spots, and almost every one of them said they would be willing to pay $300 a month rent if they could find a place, $300 to $400. Most of them had some kind of income. I have a dream about my town of Manila. We have an 11-acre park out there, and it has a campground on it that's very underutilized. And I picture a little village that could house people who are newly homeless, because I want to remind us that homelessness breeds drug addiction and depression and mental illness. You know, when you find yourself in that position, you need to find relief, and so people tend to go that direction. The population I'd like to target are people that find themselves newly in this predicament. And I would like it if my town of Manila could open up some of our vacant campsites. We already have the infrastructure, water and sewer, to a couple of families, several trailers. I picture trailers that are sitting around in people's backyards all over the county that could be refurbished, and the future tenants would help work on those trailers. But there's lots of logistical hurdles to overcome, as well as NIMBYism in our own town. But I think even each little inroad that each community could make to take care of a few people is going to get us on our way. And I'm going to introduce, the next up is my new friend Tyler.
Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm one of those people living out in the dunes, and it'd be nice to get some place to be warm, you know, because I have nowhere else to go. So, yeah, it would help probably more than just me, but it would definitely help me. So,
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Goldhammer. I live in Arcata, and Mike Wilson is my supervisor. I'm a retired school teacher from here, and I work mainly at the outlying areas, always working with at-risk children. That was my job. I want to say a couple things. The longer you leave the cat out of the bag, the harder it is to get it back in. I've had to work with children who lived in what was temporary housing. One of my students, when it came time for science fairs projects, we did it on cockroaches because the place was infested. At other times, they lived with a family of 5 in a camper on their truck. And this was back in the mid-90s. So I'm just urging you, declare a shelter crisis. It's not going to hurt you. It'll probably help you. It might hurt you with your developer friends. It won't hurt with most of the community. And I urge you to have a task force that's not just independent people that know nothing about our county. Have it be people that are involved and know what they're doing, and maybe draw on people from other cities that have had successful projects. Thank you.
That's big developer friends, right?
Ken Sawatsky, there isn't a solution for the problem we have here, unfortunately. Humboldt County, we can try. We can mitigate it, like, you know, finding the housing that Rex was after there. Ryan Sundberg's on the Coastal Commission, probably only 1/12 vote. Maybe he can get that conveyance to them that we need leeway as far as what we're doing, because I continually hear, well, it's in the coastal zone, we can't do that because of that. that needs to go away. We shouldn't be encumbered with that, and that's Ryan's job to bring forward to that forum. I have always looked at a place here, we're a place for lost souls. I don't know how to explain that exactly, but the same reason that I consider this to be an ark, it's a survivalist place. The tribes came here to survive, and so we will continually have more and more people that are the lost souls coming here looking for an alternative way to live. So how do you facilitate that? You're not going to get rid of it. You're not going to change them. That's what the way some of these people want to live. So I don't see a fix. I really don't. But all I can say is you can minimize it. I don't know. I guess the question you should ask yourselves is the shelter crisis has been brought here repeatedly, and I've been in the forum for the last, I don't know, 6 years now, seems longer, and nothing seems to have been done. Some great experiments. You know, we're done with the village thing and working with Betty, but it's going to take a little bit larger size project, something a little bit out of the box, and it probably is time. I don't know what the negativity of the shelter crisis is. I know there sounds like there are some positive things. Call it something different. If that name bothers you, just rename it something different, but find some kind of a solution to mitigate the problem as best you can. Thank you for my opportunity to speak on this today.
Welcome, Louis.
Hello. Name's Louis DeMartin. I guess I won't give my name and address because nobody else does now. I will comply if the rest had to. I live in Balboa Road in McKinleyville, not to get confused with Rocky Balboa. The main problem you have here is this board here are relatively nice people serving the public, but they're not a pissing post for everybody that refuses to accept responsibility, number one being Humboldt State College. Even Dr. Rudy Becking would have looked at things a little different while he was taking everything away from the rest of us. But the reason with Humboldt State, the Board of Chancellors should not allow people to come in here that they cannot afford to give housing for. That's number one. Then we have little things like where we could put all kinds of people. You take an airport zone, you have an airport out here of which nobody except those of you that work for the public can afford to fly on. Where the hell is a plane that goes to nowhere fast? And then we have an airport zone. Out where I live in Dallas Prairie, if you would allow us to put 2 or 3 units, which many of us could put 50 units on our property, I being one. But no, we can't use that because that's an airport zone. My God, as we look at all these things, everybody here should have been compelled to watch what I watched on television the other night. I'm sure you did, where you have no other recourse. I have different views on marijuana. You're reaching out for the only damn thing you got left is taxes, and that's the only place you can find to get your money. It's sick, but that's the way it is. There are so many things going on here that it's unreal. What you really ought to be realizing right now is taxation. Why is gasoline 50 cents more here than it is in Brookings? Why, when you go to McDonald's for hamburgers, should you pay fine for the hamburgers? But it's taxation, taxation, taxation. Why, if you're in Silicon Valley and you wish to go to Dallas, it costs $2,000 for a U-Haul. If you wish to come into California, it's only $1,000. You look at that for yourself. Because like most people, I'm here before you to stand behind you to tell you something I know nothing about. But it's time that this Board of Supervisors quits being used as a pissing post and others be made responsible for those that they wish to take care of. God bless you and have a nice day, hippies.
Well, that's the way to end it right there, huh? Okay, anybody want to follow that up? Okay, we will close public comment.
Drop the mic.
We dropped the mic on us.
Can I?
Supervisor Wilson.
Sure. So just sort of get the conversation going on our end.
I'm just going to make a motion for, an action, and then we can, from that, if someone seconds it, we can discuss it and kind of move. And that would just be to ask the board to approve staff and 2 of our board members to come back to our board with a recommendation on both a shelter crisis declaration and a task force. That doesn't mean that they come back with a recommendation to do them, or well, they come back with a recommendation as to whether to do them or not to do them, and in what form, or offer multiple choices, but basically bring back something that we can make a decision about. Does that make sense, or is that too vague? Or too long?
I have no idea what that motion was.
Craig,
Can
I'll
you try
try.
and boil it down?
I'll try and boil it down. I'll let, no, Virginia, you make the motion. Clear this up for me, please.
Wait a minute. No, okay. What I was hearing you say was a motion would be to have staff work with an ad hoc committee of 2 from the Board of Supervisors to bring this back. Probably we'd want a time specific. So that's the motion. You want to second it, and then I'll clarify the rest.
Well, to bring back what? I mean.
Well, I mean, this is, okay. To bring back, this is where it gets too long. I'm going to turn to our CAO. What would you like? Yeah.
I was just going to say to create an ad
We
hoc.
don't need people screaming from the audience, please.
Okay. Just trying to.
I think you would like recommendations on whether to declare a shelter crisis and whether to create a homeless or housing task force.
That's what you said. That's what yeah.
Yeah, good enough.
So. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Amy.
Supervisor Fennell, then Bone?
Actually, Supervisor Bone had his hand up. I'll go after him.
Okay, either one.
Before I vote on it, I'd like to know what the restrictions are of voting for a shelter crisis now, because it's going to have to come, and I don't know if we're not going to reinvent it, so I throw that out there. The other thing was mentioned that we hadn't done anything the last 3 years. I think I have housed homeless in the last 3 years. I've worked my ass off with a couple people, so I take offense to that. We haven't just sat up here and done nothing. And I'm good with being a piston post. I'm okay with that. You can yell and scream at me. But the problem is, this task force, it sounds like, and I'm just looking from a 5,000-foot level, everybody that's put on that task force better bring a bag of cash to build something. Because I even heard even our developer friends may be upset. Well, Danco is a developer, and he's building most of the units now. I mean, I don't know what, if we take the developers out of this, I mean, I don't see any of you guys with a carpenter's belt and 40 units of lumber ready to build something. So instead of throwing stones at people, we're obviously going to have to work with everybody involved to do this, to find the money to do it. I helped with PG&E outside the box, much to the dismay of my CAO, and says, hey, I've got 9 trailers. Where do you want to put them? I've done my job. I mean, and those trailers are very, very well put together units. And Betty Chin offered to step up. The container units was over a $100,000 investment, and we made that work. And that's working fairly well. And almost, they're turning those people over and actually getting them into housing and getting jobs. There is no lack of jobs. I can tell you, if you want to clean up and you can pee in a bottle and pass it, you can get a job. Come call me. I'll get you a job if you can do those things. But what I'm saying, we have to work together on this. We have to work with the development community. We have to work with the landlord community, as I said earlier, if this is going to work. So I don't know what the difference, what we're going to bring back on the task force. I think we had a homeless task force that used to meet every other week in Conference A for quite a while. I'm all in favor of finding some answers, but I need a little more direction on it.
Supervisor Fennell?
So, you brought up that question of positive, negative of a crisis declaration. We don't know. We've had people say to us, this will commit you to something that you will not be able to afford, blah, blah, blah. So my feeling is, first of all, I would like to offer my appreciation for the fact that we have had this discussion. It's been really, really good. I've heard a lot of good input, and that's why I think a task force is a good thing to have. Task force can maybe then say what the benefits or not of a crisis declaration are. What I would like to see is more action, and I've heard people reference that. I liked what Lance recommended, that eventually there might be a commission, that could be recommended by the task force. But I don't see a task force being something that just has meetings and that's it. I see a task force, and this is what I would ask staff to come back with recommendations, comprised of certain individuals or certain representatives of certain components of the community, such as development, et cetera, to say what exactly we can do given the wealth of knowledge that we have and the situation we're in. And I don't think it has to take that long, but I do think that the discussion today was a good one, and this would be an extension of that. So I support the idea of the task force, and I think we have a lot of information. It's just the how we go about it in our own very individual way as Humboldt County. Maybe we can come up with some solutions that other locales have not. I see the planning director in the house, and I know that he's somebody I really like working with, and we may have some creative solutions in terms of what kind of housing we can create here, where it can be located. So I think there's a lot that can be done, and I'm in support of the idea of forming a task force with eventually where it goes. But I don't want it to be something that goes on forever either, you know.
Supervisor Bass?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, first, before I make one comment, I've already set up an appointment to talk about the idea of the dollars and bringing some substandard housing up, or not. So see, something is already happening while we've been here. So that's a good thing. It helps when people in the audience, know what I'm thinking. So, and then I think, Roy mentioned he wants us to, Mr. Dahlberg, where'd you go? Admit there's a crisis. I think everyone up here does admit there were crisis. I admit there's a crisis. That's why we're talking about it. We're not ready to take the step of, because there are legal implications. There are, it is something worth really looking at, but this is the first time I think we didn't have this in-depth of a conversation 4 years ago or whenever it was. And I think everyone's brought up, really good points. And I think Supervisor Bone is the person who has been the most actively housing people through the years. And he's not he does it we all do it a little differently, but this is something we need to work on together. I like the ad hoc committee idea. Where the task force fits into that, I think would come from a recommendation from
That's a good idea.
that group.
So do you want to amend the thing to include a
think
task
that's-
force?
I think that's an
Or
understood.
ad hoc,
The ad hoc is what's the agenda. I have a question first. Would you like to go? Oh, okay. I'll go first. We've already taken public comments, so you're not going to be able to speak, just so you know. My question is, we have the Humboldt Housing and Homeless Coalition set up now, and keep talking about task force, and I'm wondering how those two mix together. Do we already have a task force set up, and should it be used differently, or, can someone please help me with that?
Ditto that question.
What? Oh, okay.
Okay. Yes and no, I guess. I would say definitely somebody from that coalition should be part of a task force. We are very light on the side of bankers, developers, and builders. We don't have any of those, except for Wes Weir in the Housing Authority. So I have to say that the coalition was formed really for the purpose of pulling down HUD money, and that's where most of our activities are. You do have a large group of very, very concerned and knowledgeable people there. So they could be the backbone of a task force with the addition of other folks in the mix.
Okay, great. That's good information. Supervisor Bone.
Then I think on that task force, you mentioned it, bankers or financiers, because I heard the whole thing started at the beginning was we have money, we don't have units. So what we need to do is Danko's team, Jim Furtado's team, heaven forbid, the developers, the guys that build where we live and create housing, bring them into the mix and saying, where are we missing? Are they the ones that are just saying they can't get, and a lot of those guys are philanthropic. They've done some things for the community, but the issue being is we can't expect them to build anything and take a loss on it.
Right.
That's none of us will do that. So in turn, we need to sit with them, the developers, and ask them, or the people that build housing, and say, what can we do? And there's also some faith-based guys that want to get involved that have the wherewithal and the money. And I would mention a couple of them because they are already doing it. They're housing people now, and they're doing it quite a bit on the backside. I don't know if anybody knows about it. It's amazing sometimes how many units Betty has on the backside that nobody counts, that people trust her to run them, and it's quite. So these people will help if they know that they're not going to take a loss on investment. But the problem is we can sit there and talk about all day how to bake the cake. But unless we talk to the guy that actually has the oven, it's still going to be just a bunch of stuff sitting there.
Right.
So we're going to have to talk to those guys that can do that and reassure them. And they don't have to make a killing. They don't have to make a lot of money. They just can't lose money on the project. And I think that's what we have to focus on a little bit, because I don't think there's anybody up here that doesn't want to build units, doesn't want to. I mean, we worked. Connie can tell you, I hounded her quite a bit on the budget hotel, because I had a couple people on the line, but they couldn't take a loss on it. And I couldn't guarantee them the money. The money wasn't guaranteed. We didn't know if we'd meet the levels of the involvement from the HUD, because it was going to be a substandard, and what we had to do to take it from substandard, and ADA comes in, and then that on the remodels skyrockets it. So we need that building technology part of it involved, because we know what the problem is. We need more units. And to get more units, we have to talk to the people that are building them.
Supervisor Wilson, then Fennel, then Pass.
Sure. So one thing on the list was the talk about the coastal zone stuff, and there is limitations to that. And I will say that we, as the county, are working on the local coastal plan update, which is basically teeing off what we just did, the general plan update. This is a time for the public to weigh in on that. If this is a use that you see that you want to have in the local coastal zone, then it actually starts with the county, and then when we present that to the Coastal Commission as part of our plan, whether, and so this is the time to do that. I mean, John, we're starting it soonish, right? Yeah. Okay. And so this is something we can have input about. So I encourage people to be part of that, because I mean, we're still living with the local coastal plan update, from 1985 or something, where the majority of the lands around Humboldt Bay, were reserved for oil, offshore oil, support. And we're obviously not, well, maybe we're not obviously going in that direction, but now is the time to really talk about whether these land uses are things we want to do. And so now is the time, if this is part of that, and the local coastal plan and the Coastal Act is part of what you want to amend to address this issue, then that's coming up. The thing I'd also like to mention is, I want there was the term throwing money at this problem, and we should be careful about how we use that terminology, because oftentimes we're talking about, we're spending money, oftentimes it's investment, oftentimes it's people doing things, and so when I get a little bit nervous when we say that, because we may be offending those folks that are working on these things. We're paying people to, most of that money is being spent on people working to try and address these problems. And to be quite honest, this is tailpipe engineering. We're at the, we spend a lot on homelessness because we're in a society that creates homelessness. And so we're in a society that really, I mean, when, I don't mean to, quote Bernie or whatever, but when you really take 50% of all new wealth and push it up to the 1%, we're fighting for the scraps at the bottom. When you're a nation that spends, the equivalent of the next 6 nations on your military, then this is what you get. What we've seen is in a lot of nations that have a lot less homelessness, they're spending a lot on their social programs before people become homeless. Okay, this is like way before. They're spending on child care, they're spending it on education, and they're spending on ways to keep people from ever getting there. And we're spinning out of control at the bottom and fighting for the scraps. So my point of that is it gets easy to point fingers at everybody doing stuff, and Rex does a ton of stuff really helping people. It's really true. And we have staff that works really hard to try and help people. But, we have to understand there's a larger societal pressure that's got us into this place. And Humboldt County, as hard as we're going to work on it, and I'm going to agree with Kent on this, we may not have the ultimate solution. It's going to be, it may be down the road, but we're going to do our best. And from that, I'm just going to say I'm ready to vote on this thing. And first we have to nominate who's going to be on this committee, and it can be anybody but me if you want. I don't really need to.
And I
Well,
think,
yeah, so maybe we should try and focus this back down. We've, a lot of this stuff is going to be answered not today, and we can probably talk for another 5 hours on all this stuff because there's a lot to talk about. But the question here is, staff, and I'm assuming that's Department of Health and Human Services staff is going to be working with an ad hoc committee. Yeah. Is that true? And CAO.
Sure, whatever you'd like.
Okay, so I just want to make sure all this is clear. So DHHS and CAO staff, and then he is correct. We need to pick 2 ad hoc committee members, and then do we need to put a date on this?
It should be time sensitive, so I'd suggest 30 to 60 days.
Okay.
I go for 30. Yeah, faster the better.
Okay, so who made the motion? Did you make the motion?
yes.
Yeah. Would you like to change them, or let's try and pick the 2 first, and then we can add the 30 days to the motion?
Do you want to do the motion?
Okay,
Let's do that rest, and then we'll just fix the motion.
Okay. Supervisor Bone?
And it's not that I don't appreciate the CAO's office. I think having them.
That never ends well.
I don't think having them on the task force is what's directly needed, because I think all the knowledge is with DHHS. But
It's not the task force.
that's just the ad hoc.
Ad hoc.
The
Is there anybody interested in being on the ad hoc group? I'll do it. One? Is there another one?
Estelle, I'll do it.
Estelle? Anybody else?
Mike was pointing it. Well, you can't. We can
Do you
only
want
have
it?
2.
We can only have 2.
I'm good.
And is,
That's like urban and rural. Yeah.
okay, so would you like to re-clarify your motion?
I'm going to turn to the CEO to make sure it gets everything it needs in it.
So what I think I'm hearing is to create a 30-day ad hoc to present recommendations on declaring a shelter crisis in the formation of a homeless and housing task force. This ad hoc will include Supervisor Rex Bone and Estelle Supervisor Fennel.
That's what I heard. Yep.
Are you okay?
Modified. Yeah.
Okay, seconder's good. County Council Blank.
Sure, just to clarify, we've done 30 days before. Does someone have a calendar to see what a board meeting is?
It has to come back the 6th.
The 6th? Okay, so February 6th is when this will come back. 27 days. Okay, all those in fit, did you?
Well, I had my hand up. I just wanted, and now that I'm on the task force, it's okay, but I did, so I get to whatever, but I did want to mention, we talked about bankers and et cetera, property owners. You know, there are people who own property who tell me that they're really concerned. Yeah, all of those things.
They're not on the ad hoc.
Yeah, I know.
They're not on the ad hoc.
Yeah.
That's on the tab, but that's what we're going to discuss.
I just wanted to say that I recommend that that be discussed at the ad hoc.
Well, you're on the ad hoc, you can discuss whatever you'd like.
And I do want to, before we, because when we vote, this will be all over, and I've heard speeches from everyone. I do want to say, I heard somebody talking about emergency shelter and sharing that among various communities of faith, et cetera, as a model. Southern Humboldt's doing that right now with the extreme weather shelter, and actually bringing back the communities of faith who had done that and just couldn't do it anymore. And so I want to give a big shout out to the people who are working on the extreme weather shelter, as well as the DHHS is working with them, and Humboldt Transit Authority to make sure that they can get to the shelters. So I just really want to get that in there.
Okay. Yeah, and it also, you know, McKinleyville also has a extreme weather shelter that, and now we work with Arcata, and if the Arcata one's full, people can transfer over to McKinleyville. McKinleyville's full, transfer to Arcata, and it rotates through the churches as well. So I heard some of the comments, I had that written down, is they were saying that should happen. It was the person from McKinleyville, and so I don't know if they're aware of what's actually going on, but we do have that set up, and there's quite a few of us that work pretty hard to make that happen. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, County Council blank. Is there any closed session on our agenda?
Yes, there are 3 items. Would you like to hear what they are? Yes.
Kind of have to.
The first one is the Board of Supervisors going into closed session regarding the performance evaluation of the Planning and Building Director. The second is a public employee performance evaluation of the Chief Probation Officer. And the third item is to meet in closed session with our negotiator regarding the Humboldt Deputy Sheriff Organization.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on these items?
Hey, we can't hear.
Oops.
At a time
I'm sorry,
a while
Kate,
ago.
would you mind starting over?
Of course, I don't mind. I'll do it again, replay. Item 2 is what I wish to speak on, and I did wish to speak on our Chief Probation Officer. I feel he's done an exceptional job. I strongly applaud you from making funding for him to be able to train someone else to fill his position when he does move on, and that's always inevitable. We never know. It could be any day, or it could be a while off if we're lucky, but he's done an exceptional job, and I wish to say he spent his money well. When it came to Measure Z, he was not out there with his hand out. So many other departments were out there asking for the mother load, but he always said, I'll get by with what I had, I'll do the best I can, and I think he's done an excellent job. I also wish to comment on item 1 regarding our planning and building. You've put a weight on John Ford's shoulder that his 2 predecessors couldn't handle. I think he's done a great job with what he's had, but unfortunately, the task you gave him is close to insurmountable. I think, you know, being the tip of the spear and the way things are going here and the necessity that he's had to go and do interim permits on projects that haven't been put out to the public. I think there's 300 or 400 permits out there that really aren't the kind of thing you want to permit, and it's unfortunate, but it seems to be taxation driven. So I do strongly applaud his skill set that he has. I think you're very lucky to have him. Of course, the Cole memo did go away, basically, as far as that goes. We'll see how that lands. That'll be difficult for our planning and building department, and I think you're going to need a skill set definitely in the future. I think that John can do the best job we can with what he has to work with. You did mention before some things that maybe he could do as far as helping you, and of course, that's some things you need to discuss. And the people, if you want the developers to do what you want out there for housing, you need to get the zoning done and the Q zones and concentrate on those things. That's the Q zones with the carrots in them for people who want higher density things. So when I think you have a person there who can accomplish that for you. If you task him to do some of those things rather than spending all of his time on cannabis. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Any other public comments? Okay, we will adjourn into closed session. Or not, we're adjourning. We are moving into closed session.
Can we take a whimsy?
What happened to you? Do you have an intravenous? Are you getting like an intravenous food feed or what?
You guys want to take like a half an hour lunch?
Yeah.
Okay, welcome back. Do we have a report out from closed session?
On closed session, nothing to report on, out on any of the 3 items.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.